Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jan Brito. My business partner is Laura Quigley. Wave your hand, Laura. We are realtors with Compass on Brito Associates of Compass. So our primary business is selling real estate, but we have a passion for serving older adults. So we formed a division of our team a couple of years ago called Capital Senior Solutions. And that specializes in working with older adults and helping them through late in life transitions. So we can not only help with the sale of your home if you do decide to move, we can also help with bringing in any resources you might need for decluttering, for downsizing, estate liquidation, estate attorneys, financial advice, the whole gamut. So we're with you from the very beginning all the way through the sale of the home and beyond. We also can help tour communities if you're downsizing to a senior community. We have lots of information on all the area communities. And what makes us qualified to actually speak to this is Laura and I went beyond the basic real estate designation for realtors that serve seniors. And we took a very intense year-long, almost graduate level course from the Seniors Real Estate Institute in Oklahoma City. And that left us with a designation called Certified Senior Housing Professional. We also have a designation as Certified Senior Downsizing Coaches, because for many people, when they start thinking about downsizing, it's quite a process to go through emotionally, mentally, physically. And so we find that helps us help people through the process. So I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Pamela Mills, who is the Assistant Director, I hope I get this right, of Care Management at Corwood Care. Pamela has more than 30 years experience leading and training and providing older adults with personalized care organization. She specializes in assistance for people living with cognitive change and their care partners. She offers comprehensive assessments, consultation, staff training, personalized engagement, and cognitive stimulation sessions, as well as advocating for you in community selection. So I'm very excited now to turn it over to Pam to begin her presentation on what can I do about cognitive change.
Excellent. Hi, all. So I'm Pam Mills, and I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Oh,
All
I'm
right,
sorry.
excellent.
I did want to make one other quick announcement. We'll go through all the slides and hold the questions until the end, but as questions come up, if you'd like to throw them in the chat, we will certainly get to them at the end of Pam's presentation. And if you could mute while the presentation is in process, that would be helpful as well. Thank you, Pam.
My pleasure. So I'm really happy to be here today. And as noted by Jan, I've actually been in the field of working with older adults for over 30 years. I actually started very young. I was a 15-year-old working in what they used to refer to as nursing homes back in the 1980s, if anybody remembers the 1980s. And I loved it. I mean, I was actually one of the few people who just kind of knew what I wanted to do from a very young age. I just had that ability to connect with people who were living with cognitive change in communities, and I got them. I kind of just naturally understood and gravitated towards wanting to be that whisperer, that supporter, that person, that advocate who can help a person living with cognitive change live a high quality of life. And I've really been dedicating myself to that ever since. And so my presentation will be all about what can I do about cognitive change, and it will take actually 3 different perspectives. The first perspective will be about learning about cognitive change. You know, what is that terminology? What does it encompass? The second perspective will be how to directly assist a person who is living with cognitive change in how they are going to need you to interact with them and support them and understand them and advocate with them. I don't say advocate for them, I say advocate with them, because when we do something for somebody, this is a little bit also about terminology, which you'll see covered in these slides in this presentation. When you do something for somebody, a lot of times that person does not have participation in that. I always try to advocate with somebody, which means that they are participating in the process. And the third area that I'm going to talk about is how to be with somebody in their quality of life. So assuring that somebody who is living with cognitive change is having and continuing to have a high quality of life. And that is actually possible throughout the entire journey of cognitive change. So first of all, let me start from the very beginning. What is normal aging? You know, I've often made the joke, you get 5 people in a room, you get 7 different definitions of what normal is. Because, you know, who really is normal anyway? I don't know whoever came up with that word. I think it is truly a mathematical term. It is about you know, a mathematical understanding of normal, and really has nothing to do with people. So, you know, we use the term for people all the time, but as we are learning more and more about diversity in our population, our human population, we have come to understand that indeed we are all individuals and we are very diverse in our capabilities. But in using that mathematical term of normal, what is normal? So normal aging is physical and cognitive changes that happen as a person lives longer. If you're aging, that means you're still alive. So that's a good thing. You're still here. So, because we all know what the alternative is, you know, so you want to age, you know, that is normal, you know, for people who turn to Hollywood and what they think aging should look like in Hollywood. I'm sorry, but that is not normal. And that is probably not even healthy. Okay, so understanding what is normal, physical and cognitive changes, the longer you live is normal. Your body will change. It will not remain the same it was at, you know, 20 years old, at 35 years old, at 40 years old, or 50 years old. Your brain is constantly changing its cellular structure. Your body is changing its physical structure. That is normal. And we all experience aging in different ways. And so much of that is based on our genetic makeup, as well as how much we exercise and what we eat and our stress level. Sometimes it has to do with where we live in the world, the amount of sun that our skin is exposed to, the amount of toxins that could potentially be in the air that we breathe. I mean, so many of these random, you know, kind of data points have very much to do with things that we cannot control. But there are some things that we can control. So we try to take responsibility for those. And neurocognitive disorder, what I refer to as cognitive change, what some people would refer to as Alzheimer's disease or dementia or vascular dementia or frontal temporal lobe dementia, those types of disorders, those diseases of the brain are not normal. Okay, that does not happen to everybody and should not happen. So occasional forgetting is normal. Okay, the difference between where did I put my keys versus what are those? If I was going to show you a set of keys, if you didn't know what they were, that is not normal. Okay, I didn't send my daughter a birthday card. That's normal. Versus I have a daughter, again, not normal. Okay, so understanding how you see something and how you experience something, what is, normal. And actually, I try to explain this to people too. We're being asked to remember more things through technology than ever before. If we were going to go back to the, 1960s and 70s, we didn't have to know 9,000 passwords. That the asking of our brain to do that task did not exist. When you're going back to the, the 1940s and the 1950s, the need to have such detailed memory of the tasks that we do every day and multitasking, none of that existed. People didn't multitask in the 1950s. It didn't happen. It wasn't required. Rather, as society has continued to become more modern and more technical, and industries have continued to expand and population has expanded, we are asking the brain to do much more work than it ever needed how to. And honestly, the brain design hasn't changed in the, millions of years since the first human brain kind of came on the planet. So, it within itself does not change its cellular structure, but what it does change is through neuroplasticity, its ability to do different things, and its ability to learn does change. So, in other words, be gentle on yourself and understand that, your brain is what it is, and being able to continue to thrive is always possible. But we also have to know that we are sometimes asking our brains to do too much, and then when it can't do as much as we think we should be able to do, we're down on ourselves, and we question ourselves and be like, oh my God, I forgot my password. Does that mean I'm getting cognitive change? Does that mean that I'm getting dementia? Oh, I can't remember where I put my glasses. Does that mean I'm getting dementia? Just to put that out there, I've been doing that since I was 10. So no, some people just can't find things, which is why sometimes I have more than one set of glasses on my desk at one time, because you never know where I'm going to put them. That's me. That's my personality. That's how I do things. So that's normal for me. So don't judge yourself against other people too. Okay, so let's talk about what is cognitive change. What are these disorders of the brain? They are actually disorders of executive functioning. And that's the area of your brain that is most affected by these disorders. And how you would see this be affected is through your attention, your ability to pay attention, your ability to plan, your ability to problem solve, your ability to have self-control. And it actually depends on the disorder that you're experiencing as to how much or how little of these symptoms are occurring. So a person who is experiencing frontal temporal lobe cognitive change will have different ways of expressing these symptoms. They will have much less inner editor and inhibition. They will be unable to follow rules much more than let's say, somebody who's experiencing Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so the disorders and how they affect the brain are very different from one another. A lot of people who give education sessions about dementia use the term of the umbrella of dementia. I also like to compare it to cancer. Cancer, the term itself is an umbrella term, but having breast cancer is very different than having prostate cancer. I mean, there are two totally different diseases. And so it is very similar for the diseases of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is a very different disease than frontal temporal lobe dementia. And vascular dementia is a very different type of disease than, let's say, Wernicke-Korsakoff disorder. So they are very, very different. And so we just use this as an umbrella term. And when you meet one person who's experiencing cognitive change, you are meeting one person. So that is very important to also understand. Okay, if I was going to, again, oversimplify cognitive impairment or the cognitive change disorders, you will see these common themes in common. So you have amnesia, which is how the disorder is affecting memory. It is affecting your ability to have long-term or short-term memory retention. Okay, you will have changes in aphasia, which is the inability to use or understand language. And there are different types of aphasia. There are word selection aphasias, there are receptive aphasias, there are expressive aphasias, there are aphasia is another umbrella term, whole slew of disorders that are affected through aphasia within itself. And again, they are not all identical. There is agnosia, which is the inability to recognize or use common objects or people. So that is like if I was going to reach for a pen, I might not know what this is, and I might try to write with a toothbrush or something like that. That would be agnosia, where I can't, recognize what this object is and use it properly. And then apraxia is how you use your muscles. Okay, so that's a coordinated and purposeful movement, and different types of apraxia affect different people in different ways. For example, if I had Parkinson's disease, then my apraxia is surely going to be different than somebody who has Alzheimer's disease. And then there's my favorite Scrabble word, anosognosia, which is a word that talks about the person's inability to know that they actually have a disorder. So I am not cognizant of the fact that I cannot remember. Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question multiple times because I do not remember that I already asked you that question before. I cannot perceive the fact that I already asked you that question. So I have anosognosia. I don't remember that I don't remember. Okay, so that's what that means. The progression of cognitive change happens over time. And again, it is very much based on the type of disorder that a person has. So what is lost first, most commonly, is the short-term memory, which is, remembering things that have happened days ago, hours ago, or minutes ago. Okay. And that is, as the disease is progressing, then I lose more retention of my short-term memory. So in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's disease, I might forget what happened days ago. In the moderate stage of Alzheimer's disease, I might forget what happened hours or minutes ago. So as it progresses, it gets worse. And then what is retained the longest is your long-term memory. Okay, so I might remember what happened in my childhood, all the way up to the later stages of Alzheimer's disease. One of the memories that stays with the person the longest is emotional memory. So when I used to train professional caregivers, I let them know you are always creating emotional memories. So you're either creating a memory of fear or a memory of joy. So make sure that the memories that you are creating are joyful memories, because then you have a much higher chance of instilling trust, building rapport, and helping a person welcome you into their lives. So these disorders can be very long journeys. They are very rarely instantaneous. Okay, there are not many cognitive disorders that happen overnight in their ability to change a human being's performance or capability. In many cases, the most typical uses Alzheimer's disease, because everyone's kind of heard of that disorder the most. It has probably gotten the most press and the most attention because of all the amazing work that the Alzheimer's Association does. But that is a disorder that can take 20 years in its progression. And that's a long time. Okay, it's a very, very long time. And so you're going to have different ways that that disease is going to affect people, from very mildly in the beginning, which could be from 3 to 10 years, to the most severe end of the journey when the person's life usually ceases, and that is within the last 1 to 2 years of the person's journey. So it's important to understand that, again, you've met one person with a cognitive change disorder, you have met one person, but there are some overarching themes that a lot of these disorders do have in common. So language matters. You might have noticed that I tend not to use the word dementia as much. And the reason for that is because it's really gotten a very bad rap and it scares a lot of people. So since a lot of people think of dementia, they think of locking people up in facilities and institutions and all those horrible places. Thank goodness facilities for what we think of from an institutional aspect, most of those no longer exist. There are very few and far between. I'm not going to say they're not out there, but there are much better communities that exist, residential communities that exist, where people are receiving much better care and person-supported care and person-centered care. Thank goodness we have come to understand that there are much better ways to treat a person that is living with these disorders. So because some people have those memories that go back a long time to when we did not treat people in very appropriate and supportive and person-centered ways, they think of that when they hear the word dementia. I try to avoid using that term. But cognitive change, I think everyone can relate to. People can relate to the fact that we all have cognitive moments in our lives that change. Our brains are different than they were when they were, 20 and 30 years old. That's normal. So we want to normalize the experience of living with cognitive change and see the diseases of cognitive change to be more as disorders than dementia, which has a lot of stigma. Okay, so if you want to do your research and you want to go to the internet, I highly recommend going to the Alzheimer's Association website. They have a lot of really, really great education. So I put the website address up there, but there are a variety of different types of neurocognitive impairment and cognitive change and the disorders of cognitive change. There are many different types and they all affect people differently. So similar to the term normal, there is no normal when it comes to cognitive change. Each person is different and each disorder is different in how it affects the brain and how it affects the person and how that person experiences symptoms based on that disorder. So here are just some examples of different types of disorders. Some neurologists and researchers have identified over 99 different types of cognitive change that can affect a person's brain. So of course, the most diagnosed that we've heard is Alzheimer's disease. The second most diagnosed is called vascular. And those, by the way, are two different types of disorders. They affect the brain in very different ways. There is Lewy body disorder, there is mixed disorder, there's Parkinson's disease, there's frontal temporal lobe, alcohol-related brain damage, also called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is from bacteria that was in meat, also called mad cow disease. There's Huntington's disease, which is actually a genetic disorder. You cannot catch Huntington's. You cannot suddenly acquire Huntington's. It's something that your body is born with. It's a genetic disorder. There's LATE, which is limbic predominant age-related TDP-43 encephalopathy. Again, encephalopathy, another good Scrabble word. So you have really great diseases that if you want to pretend you're a neurologist at a cocktail party, you can rattle some of these things off. But again, I'm not a neurologist. I just play one on TV. But these are really important informations to understand when it comes to how the disorders are affecting the brain. They're very different, very, very different. Okay, so things that could be neurocognitive disorder, but just look like one, that they're not actually a permanent disorder. Things like depression an infection, urinary tract infection is the number one, ding, 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 potential cause of acute cognitive change or sudden cognitive change in a person. So if you know a loved one that they were fine yesterday or they were fine last week and now suddenly they are losing their ability to think clearly, they are maybe having hallucinations or delusions, or their speech has changed, check them out for a urinary tract infection. To have that type of instant change happen overnight, that is not normal. Other things that could happen overnight changes are related to dehydration. That's probably the one that the two that I see the most are dehydration and UTI, affecting somebody that we see cognitive change, that they're just not as capable as they were the week before. And they're really having a hard time with acute changes. So if you are not drinking enough water, which is really important to constantly be drinking it, I'd say at least 64 ounces of water a day. I know that sounds like you're drinking a swimming pool, but it is actually necessary for your body. There you go. Jan's taking her water. So it's really important for your brain to drink. I got mine right here. It's really, really important to hydrate and to keep your body healthy through hydration, especially as you're getting older. And yes, the nutritional recommendation is for 64 ounces of water a day. If you can, of course, do more than that, go for it. But you'd be surprised. I hear from older adults that sometimes they don't even have a full single glass of water, which is 16 ounces. They don't even have that during the day. And if you are not hydrating enough, your brain will definitely feel it. And the next time you go to the doctor and you have a complete blood count, sometimes called a CBC, they'll be able to see that in your blood. They'll be able to see through your kidney levels, that you are not hydrating enough, and your physician hopefully will report that to you, that you need to hydrate more. So do make sure to go to your doctor and check some of these things out if you have noticed cognitive change in your own abilities. Okay, so delirium is also something that we see, and that is an extreme type of change, again, in a person, happens more in an acute way. So if I am dehydrated, or if I have a urinary tract infection and it goes untreated, I will not only see cognitive change, I could potentially wind up with delirium, which is a very serious type of cognitive change, where the person will have a sudden onset, they'll have fluctuating mental status, they'll have sometimes difficulty understanding or using language. Their speech might be garbled, they might have difficulty reading and writing, they will be unable to pay attention and have organized thought processes. They might even be an altered level of consciousness. They might have hallucinations and delusions. Again, these types of things do not happen suddenly. It is not common for those types of symptoms to happen suddenly. So it's really important to note when you see sudden changes and to get somebody to the doctor, because delirium is treatable. Okay, so also when it comes to diagnosing neurocognitive impairment, it's important to understand that this is a process. It is not something that just happens through a run-of-the-mill mini mental test. If your doctor diagnoses you with neurocognitive impairment and has only done a mini mental test on you, you need to find another doctor immediately. So that is, again, not a best practice. So if you are experiencing neurocognitive change in yourself or someone that you love, then it is really important that you do a detailed kind of analysis of what's going on with that person physically, emotionally, and there are many tests that a person should do. And again, one of them is just making sure that the person has been drinking enough water and that they have that they don't have an infection, that they've been regularly to the doctor, that they have had a complete blood count done, that they have had their thyroid levels checked, their vitamin D levels checked, their vitamin B. B12 is again a huge one for cognitive status. And if somebody has very low vitamin B12, or low, very, very low potassium, that again can lead to temporary or acute cognitive changes. Okay, so it's also important to understand that a good neurologist will ask you for a CAT scan, an MRI, or a PET scan because he wants to see your brain. You know, he wants to see what your brain, or she wants to see what your brain actually look like. And they should be looking at these scans of your brain so they can see, you know, how your brain is being affected. Okay, so again, no mini mentals alone lead to a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or other types of cognitive change. And now also you want to go to a vision specialist and an audiologist, because if you're not able to see the world clearly or hear the world clearly, that has very much affect your cognitive status. So you always want to make sure that you have the right glasses prescription, that you have hearing aids if your audiologist is recommending them, because that does help your brain process so much better. Something called mild cognitive impairment is also something that can occur. Now, this is very different than the other types of disorders like Alzheimer's disease. Mild cognitive impairment is what I'd consider the gray zone between an actual disorder such as Alzheimer's disease and what is deemed normal aging. So it is that gray zone. It means that the person is a little bit worse than what is considered to be normal, but they have not yet progressed to the point where they have a diagnosable Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia or Wernicke-Korsakoff. It's that right in between. It's the before the first stage of Alzheimer's disease, but after normal aging. And this mild cognitive impairment, sometimes referred to as minimal cognitive impairment, can affect 15 to 20% of people who are age 65 and older. And only 15%, that's again, not a lot, 15% of people who have already been diagnosed with minimal or mild cognitive impairment progress further to develop other types of cognitive change, like Alzheimer's disease. So people think that these diseases of cognitive change are affecting like 9 out of 10 older adults. No, that's not true. There are actually more people that are cognitively capable in their older adult years than not. And so we need to start seeing older adults as not all being cognitively incapable. And that's why we want to work with organizations like the Alzheimer's Society and the Alzheimer's Association to stop stigma, to try to see older adults as being very capable, because we all are, and that's important for us to note. Some different contributory causes of different types of cognitive disorders. Here is a short list. I put the iceberg there, so we understand that there's a lot more that's going underneath the surface than what is actually happening on the surface with many people. So unfortunately, there still is no 100% known cause, and there still is no 100% known cure. We are working towards that in our research, which is great. We're hearing more and more advances every year, and I'm hoping, I'm 52, I'm hoping by the time I become 82 that we will have our first survivor of a diagnosable disorder like Alzheimer's disease, where we are able to stop the progression. Unfortunately, we have not yet found how to reverse symptomology, or how to reverse the cellular structure of the brain that has already been affected by these diseases. But we have, we're working on ways to potentially stop the progression from continuing. So some things that are controllable: exercise, how much you exercise. People recommend 30 minutes a day as a good, starting point for us to exercise. And that is, some form of, walking, or just staying active. We hear physicians talk about the 10,000 steps a day. That is a great goal for us to try and meet. But if you can always do more than that, that is great as well. If you find yourself sitting a lot during the day, at least try to keep your body moving as much as you can. Move your arms up and down, kind of do some stretching. If you can work with a personal trainer, you can do that as well, and have them come over and create a routine for you that fits within your lifestyle. There are lots of resources out there to stay healthy. You don't have to be a Arnold Schwarzenegger to stay fit. You can actually do just some small ways of working your body and keeping it healthy as you get older in life, and staying healthy. It doesn't have to be intensive workouts. It can be short little spurts of walking, short little spurts around the block, or through your house, or using different things like soup cans to provide some weight. There are lots of creative ways to stay fit. And then also vitamin-rich diets. We want to try to, avoid the eating of over-processed foods, or sometimes even any processed foods. We want to eat, more fruits and vegetables. We want to, eat healthier foods, organic foods. You want to eat foods that are lower in fat and lower in sodium. Doesn't mean that you can't have, the cheesecake. Doesn't mean you can't have the chocolate. But you want to work with your doctor or a nutritionist to come up with a diet that is is well-rounded and healthy, and you're not eating too little, but then also you're eating what's right for your body. So that's very important to work with some specialists. Cognitive stimulation, again, really important, playing those, those brain games. And I have a slide just kind of showing different ways that you can keep your brain active. We'll talk about that later. Socializing, surprisingly enough, socializing is so important for older adults. You want to go out there. You can be an introvert and also socialize. Okay, you don't have to go out to parties every day, or constantly be doing things, but you want to at least, be around other people. You don't want to be isolated. There's actually some fascinating studies on how isolation has the same negative health effects as smoking. Okay, so yeah, so if you feel like that, you don't smoke, so you're living a healthy life. If you are isolated, you're actually not living a healthy life. So you want to, again, get out there and meet people, and be around supportive, healthy people that can, help you laugh and learn and love life. I mean, that is very healthy for your brain. Stress management, really, really important. I see a lot of older adults that are not getting help with anxiety and stress. And it's really important to take care of yourself and get enough sleep, and to talk to somebody if you're experiencing anxiety or depression or overarching stress, to actually spend some time on healthy mental health, because that is important for your brain and your cognitive status as well. Unfortunately, again, no known cure yet, I want to say, but that does not mean that there are not things that we cannot do. So just here are some examples of things that we can do to keep our brain active. Arts and crafts, very good for your brain. You don't necessarily have to do it well. I had a whole experience through high school where I published a comic strip made of just stick people. So it's actually true. I had a comic strip in my high school newspaper called The Stick Family, and I would draw the Stick Family doing a variety of different cute little fun things. I never took up a career in comic drawing, but the Stick Family did exist at one time in my past. So you don't have to do arts and crafts well, but being creative is very, very healthy for your brain, whether it's painting or drawing or sketching or making stick people or, just finding something fun to do. Social groups, again, socialization, really important, whether you're volunteering or you're going to your center of worship or you're going to group educational activities. For those of you who are living in, hopefully, I think all of us are living in the DMV area. A lot of the senior centers near us in this DMV are excellent in the things that they offer. I live in the Darnestown area, and there are a lot of really, in Montgomery County, and there are a lot of really great senior centers surrounding us all over Montgomery County, and they are very, very active in the things that they provide to people. Whether it's a Rockville Senior Center that has an amazing gym and classes and foreign language classes and lectures, or the Poolesville Senior Center that has a amazing pickleball team. I mean, there are so many resources in this area for older adults to participate in. And to stay social and to stay active. I highly recommend checking out your local senior centers. Learning a second language. You can actually take language classes online for free. So if you've ever wanted to learn how to speak French or Latin or Spanish or Chinese, so you can go to your local Asian restaurant and order in their language, which is very impressive, by the way. You'll get the best food if you speak Mandarin, by the way. You will it's great to just learn different languages as we get older, and it's actually very healthy for your brain. Same thing with learning how to play a musical instrument or being in the choir. Again, don't necessarily have to sing well, but if there's a choir that will accept you, I call it making a joyful noise. If I am making a joyful noise, emphasis on my noise, then it is also healthy for your brain. And then being on the computer. Again, if you're over 80, it is actually great for your brain to learn how to use technology. It's healthy for your brain to learn that process. So just turn to your grandchildren, your great grandchildren to show you how to do it. Alzheimer's disease is very much related to sleep. Alzheimer's disease specifically. So a lack of sleep and sleep apnea has shown cellular damage to brains over time. So it's important that you work with a sleep specialist if you are not sleeping properly, if you are not getting quality sleep. And it's actually, again, very common to not get quality sleep as you are aging. So it is important to work with a specialist on how to see new or different ways to change your sleep routine so that your brain is getting the sleep that it needs, because lack of sleep does often lead to cognitive impairment. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping our brain healthy by, again, something that we can work on controlling, which is the amount of sleep that we are getting. So now we're going to talk a little bit about supporting a person who is living with cognitive change. So if you are a spousal caregiver or an adult child, this section is going to help you learn a little bit more skills. Some common misperceptions is that residential communities are bad. And like I said earlier in this presentation, that's because we're thinking of how things used to be in the 40s, 50s, 60s, where some of these, and I will use that word, facility or institution, was honestly a really horrible place. Okay, but thank goodness many of these places do not exist in that capacity anymore. We have learned and we have changed how we offer residential options to our older adults who are living with cognitive change. And there are many communities out there that I visit every day as a care manager, and I'm like, man, I think I want to move in here. This place is nicer than my own home. And it's the food that they provide is phenomenal. The apartment sizes are large and beautiful and comfortable. So there are some really, really great resources out there. And I know Jan and her team can definitely help you find a great residential option if you're ready to take that next step. So it's very much up to you as to where you want to live as you are aging. And you can age successfully in your own home. And you can also age successfully in a community. So there are different options for every person. So when it comes to having a conversation with somebody that you feel that it's time for them to move to a different level of care or a different residential location, it's hard to change. And I think we have to be very honest about that. If somebody is going to be moving to an assisted living, there is going to be a lot of downsizing that is going to be involved in that process. And it is not an easy process. It will bring up feelings of loss. It will bring up feelings of grief. It will bring up feelings of anxiety. And these are normal feelings to have. Adjustment to change is hard, and we have to be sensitive to that fact. So we take it slow and we make sure to involve the person who is going through this change in the change themselves. You know, we don't do it for them. Again, there's that language. We do it with them. So that's very important. We never should ever do what I used to call a drop and run, where somebody just kind of drops somebody off at a community and says, see ya, good luck, this is your new home, okay, goodbye, take care. Love you, I'll be visiting. No, never do that ever to anybody, because nobody would ever want that done to them. And that would create what is called significant transition trauma, which is high anxiety, high stress reaction when somebody is going through a significant change, and it can make somebody homesick, traumatized, anxious. And if somebody is already experiencing cognitive change already, it can lead to some very severe reactions, including death. So never ever go through an uneasy or an instantaneous change without easing into the process, because it is not healthy for that person. Okay, let the person know that if you're going to be bringing in help, whether it's through a caregiver, a professional caregiver, a friend, a grandchild, or if you're going to be involving that person moving to the community, explain to them why. Explain to them why this is the right choice at this time for them, and have that conversation. Focus on, you know, the cans and the cannots, what you can do as maybe an adult child, what you can do as a spouse, but what you cannot do as well as a, you know, we are not all professional caregivers. We are not nurses. We are not doctors. I do not do my own surgery. I do not remove my own teeth. Okay, so there are professionals out there for every career, and we have to rely on those professionals to do those trained jobs that they are professional and trained at. So it's great to sometimes be a spouse. It's sometimes great to be a friend. It's sometimes great to be an adult child. You don't necessarily also have to be a professional caregiver. There are professionals out there that can do that. So having that conversation with your loved one is important to have. And always take time to listen and connect. You know, I can sit down and have this conversation with my spouse, you know, that now is the time that I think it's necessary that we bring in a professional caregiver to help both of us, because I'm having a really hard time doing the laundry. I'm having a really hard time cooking meals every day, and I need help. But then also listen and connect to what that person is saying in response to this new choice, to this new experience. Not everybody is going to, you know, take easily to having a new person in their house, using their dishes and using the stove and going into the refrigerator and making food that maybe their favorite recipe for years, and it's going to taste different than what it did before because I'm not making it. You know, those are again normal changes and normal reactions to experiencing change. So be empathetic and sit down and have a really good conversation with your loved one and work these problems out together. Understand that, you know, don't be using words like you should or you must or you ought. Don't try to make the person feel guilty or tell them what to do, but be open, have an open-hearted conversation of the things that concern you, your frustrations, your hopes, your fears, and then the person will most likely go along with what you have to say. Okay, and also look at the person's preferences and their routines. So if a person is indeed diagnosed with cognitive disorders like Alzheimer's disease, you want to try and create a record of the ways that person feels familiar in their own home and in their own routine. Because with that type of disorder, they're going to lose the ability to do these things for themselves in time. So we want to be able to kind of memorialize how that person is feeling comfortable around these routines so that we can then train a professional caregiver in how to do these things. And so I know I have my morning routine where I'll, you know, we'll get up and I like to make coffee in a certain way. And I like my coffee out of an espresso maker, not necessarily out of a drip pot, you know, so you know, I also, you know, like to make scrambled eggs in a certain way. I always make mine with cheese and I use real chicken eggs from the chickens that are living in my backyard. Yes, that is true. And, you know, it tastes, I can't eat supermarket eggs. It tastes different to me. It's true. So when I get older and if somebody was going to be coming into my home and is going to be providing professional chef services for me, I will make sure that they are using real chicken eggs and not ones from the supermarket. So it's important to note that in your living history of how things are important to you for your routine. And I go over this as a care manager with many of my clients on writing these living histories, these records, so that when professional caregivers are coming on the scene, they have as much information as possible to make things as comfortable as possible for the person that they are assisting every day. Okay, so again, when do I know that enough is enough? When you're burnt out. If you are a family caregiver for somebody and you're experiencing burnout, you've reached your limit. That's not healthy. When you are stressed, when you are anxious, when you're not getting enough sleep, you know, it is long past enough, and that's not healthy for you. So family caregivers need to take care of themselves as well as the person that they are supporting every day. And you do need sleep, and stress can cause illness and does cause illness. And in many situations, a family caregiver actually is developing illnesses much more than the person that they're caring for, you know, so it's important to understand that you need help, and we need to know when enough is enough. And that's why sometimes bringing in a care manager like myself is very helpful to help you make those transitions. So here are some warning signs of caregiver stress. When you're experiencing physical symptoms like you're exhausted, you're worn out, you're starting to get emotional symptoms like you're feeling resentful or bitter towards your loved one, when your relationally stressed, when you're feeling used or unappreciated, and when you're financially stressed, when you're feeling financially overwhelmed and financially depleted. You know, we need to turn to the professionals that are out there that are available to help us. And this is called Thrive, which is a little model that I came up with a few years ago in how to provide a healthy quality of life for a person living with cognitive change. And so Thrive stands for time, which is taking time to support a person, you know, being patient, going slow, allowing them to take the time that they need to be as independent as possible with the tasks that they are still independently capable of performing. Heart, which is all about the empathy part, the feeling part, seeing the heart of the person as being still there, because it is still there despite the diagnosis of a particular disorder. The heart of the person is still there, their personality, how they laugh, what they laugh at, the enjoyment that they find in life, the music that they still enjoy, all of that, the heart of who they are is still there. And we need to continue to recognize that. Speaking of recognizing, we want to always recognize that that person is still important and that they still have preferences, that their life choices matter, their life history matters, their experiences and their values matter, their opinion matters. So that's what we always want to recognize, who they are and their life process and their life preferences and their autonomy. We want to include them in everything that we do. We might not have them be able to make every decision or make every choice, but we can include them in the process. Like I said, we're going to be making decisions with somebody and not necessarily for somebody. So it's very important to continue to include someone in that process. And also we want to make sure the person is living a vital life. When I talked about isolation and how isolation is not healthy for a person at any age, but particularly for an older adult or a person living with cognitive change. We want to provide a vital, healthy, well-rounded life where we're including activities and music and healthy choices and exercise and a whole lot of different ways to enhance a person's well-being, to continue to be purposeful is very important. To feel that your life matters and your opinion matters is vital to a person's overall well-being. And then, of course, lastly, empathy. We have to be able to try and understand what is going on with the person and how it is an additional effort to function every day when you are living with a cognitive disorder, that it just is difficult to live with any disease, particularly a cognitive disorder. It's difficult to live. So we need to be empathetic. And we need to be patient, and we try to see it from their point of view. So we need to be kind. We need to be welcoming. We need to normalize these experiences of living with cognitive change. We need to treat the person as if what they are experiencing is as normal as it can possibly be. We don't isolate them. We don't stigmatize them. We don't judge them. We don't treat them in a way that is abusive or offensive or disheartening or anything that is hurtful. You know, we don't do that. So it's really important to understand that, you know, the heart of your relationship is still there, even though it is maybe a little more challenged in how it is being experienced between you two. So it's important to understand that someone who is living with cognitive impairment can still communicate and wants to communicate, you know, their needs. So it's a myth to think that that person cannot communicate and cannot let you know what they need. people living with cognitive disorders usually know what they want. They know, you know, how they want it, but they're just having sometimes difficulty communicating it due to aphasia or due to how the brain is functioning. So we have to look at different ways of how communication is occurring, maybe through gestures or through emotional responses. That too is a form of communication. Someone with a neurocognitive disorder needs everything done for them. That is a myth. That is not true. As I said earlier, there are a long process of change in a person when they are experiencing certain disorders, like Alzheimer's disease. It can be over 20 years of a disorder, of experiences and symptoms. So we have to be sensitive to the fact that change affects each person differently, and a disorder affects each person differently. You've met one person living with cognitive change, you have met one person. So we need a careful balance between independence and reliance, between structure and rigidity. It's all about balance. It's all about empathy. It's all about involving somebody in their life in the best ways that they can still be involved. We want to avoid arguing with somebody. By the way, you'll never win. When you try to argue with somebody who is living with cognitive change, you're never going to win. So just give it up. Don't even try. So you don't want to ridicule them, of course. You don't want to correct them. You don't want to quiz the person. You don't want to say things to them like, don't you remember you just asked me a minute ago that very same question? No, because they don't remember, which is why they asked you twice. So, you know, try to be sensitive to the fact that their brain is not functioning in the way that it should. Because of the disorder that they are experiencing. It is a disease. It is a disease of the brain, and they are not capable, because of the disease of the brain, to be in the same way of understanding their environment and to maintain the same functioning that they were before. So it is really important that we be sensitive to the fact and we slow down when we're speaking without sounding, you know, infantile or talking to a person in an infantile manner. We want to recognize them and honor them and support them and love them and treat them in the same ways that we would want to be treated, while also making it more simple, you know, for them to understand and to thrive. So we want to be patient. We don't want to finish somebody's sentences for them. You know, that's another thing that I've sometimes see when a person with cognitive change is having a longer time expressing themselves. Sometimes their loved ones will jump in and finish the sentence. That just gets kind of a little frustrating, you know, for a person living with cognitive change, because you might be providing the wrong answer from what they were trying to think, and then they get distracted, and then they cannot give you the answer that they want to give. So try not to do that. Just try to take some time. And sometimes I'll tell people, I said, take a deep breath, let the words come. I'm here, I'm standing here, I'm listening, I'm ready. You know, whenever you think about it, if you can't think of the word, how about you point to me what you want, or describe it for me? What is it that you're trying to say? I'm listening. And then give them a variety of different ways of expressing. We also want to be sensitive to the environment that the person is in. Noisy environments are not healthy for the brain, particularly for somebody that is living with cognitive change. The brain loses its ability to understand stimulation. That is one of the processes of the brain that is lost with certain types of disorders. So when you have a person in a noisy environment, it just is difficult to think. It's difficult to process. It becomes stressful, anxious, and overwhelming. And so we want to kind of have the person in a little bit more quieter environment, where only one person is maybe interacting with them at a time, where there's not a lot of noise in the background. where they're able to focus better and more clearly on the things that they need to focus on or make decisions about or be involved in. So working with a dementia specialist like myself can also be very helpful, where I can train you how to best interact with your loved one who is experiencing cognitive change. And you want to emotionally connect. You always want to, again, see the heart of that person, validate their truth. If they're telling you something that you know is not correct, you don't have to correct them. You can be like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Oh, wow, look at that dog over there. And there's no dog in the corner. Look at that dog over there. He's so cute. Oh, okay, well, what does he look like? Describe him for me. Oh, he's real fuzzy. He reminds me of the dog that I had when I was a kid. Oh, wow, that's great. What was the dog's name? It was Rover. I really loved him. Oh, wow, I bet Rover is an amazing dog. Again, you don't have to be like, well, there's no dog over there. That's not helpful. So just kind of go with the flow. That is very helpful. Just let them be, who they are. Let them tell you their story and be willing to listen, offer reassurance, offer praise, share their feelings, provide positive regard. That is very, very helpful and will always lead to a positive result. Okay, again, living within their abilities, we're not going to expect them to do things the same way that they always did before, because again, their brain is not the same as it was before. So we're not going to expect it to function in the same way. So we're going to keep things a little more simple. We're going to keep things a little more straightforward. We're going to keep things a little more relevant, a little more interesting. We're going to set the person up for success. That is important. And I gave a couple of examples here in some statements. So like if it's time for lunch, let's say, I'm not going to turn to the person who is living with Alzheimer's disease, who is maybe in a later or moderate stage, and I'm going to say to them, what do you want to eat? Well, that person is probably not going to be able to tell you, because there's just way too many things to eat in this world. I can eat an apple. I could eat a sandwich. I could eat a roast beef. I could eat a steak. There's a lot of things I could eat. I could go outside and eat some flowers, because there are some people who eat flowers. There's way too much to choose from. If you're going to ask me what I want to eat, sometimes I just want to eat a hot fudge sundae, because even though it's 7 o'clock in the morning, that is what I want to eat, and that's what I'm feeling right now. So don't ask me what I want to eat, but ask me would I like an apple, or would I like a sandwich? Or I know you really like, I made some homemade hummus this morning for this team meeting that we were having here at work. Would you like some homemade hummus? Sure enough, I would. That would be delicious. I really like that. I can eat hummus on my fingers. I love it so much. So it's delicious. So that's one of my favorite foods. So probably as I get older, that's something that I'm going to want to continue to eat. So offer me some of my favorite foods, and then I know that I'm going to eat. If the person cannot make a decision, maybe it's because I'm offering too many choices that is overwhelming for their brain. And again, I'm not going to say to a person, what do you want to do today? Wow, there's just so many possibilities out there. I can't even begin to tell you. I could go rock climbing. I could go bicycling. I could go see a movie. I could do nothing. I could read a book. I could, way too much to think about, but if you say to me instead, wouldn't a walk outside feel great right now? Wow, you know what? It would. I would love that. Absolutely. I try to avoid also offering yes or no questions, because in some cases when I'm offering yes or no questions, I get a lot of no's. Okay. So I say things like, I'm going for a walk. How about you join me? Wouldn't that be great? I'd love for you to join me. And then sometimes the person is like, well, yeah, I would like to join you. That would be great. Rather than, do you want to go? I don't try to offer that, because that tends to sometimes lead to a no, I don't want to go, but would you like to join me? Sure. That sounds lovely. I'd like to be with somebody right now. That helps me feel less lonely. So yeah, let's do it. Again, empower each person. People are still capable at a variety of different experiences or parts of their individual journey. Met one person, you have met one person living with cognitive change. So we always want to continue to offer that person as much as they possibly can for as long as they can do it. Okay. And we want to empower them to do the things with you that they can still do. So if the person is still able to dress themselves, we are going to make sure that they're going to continue to do that. If it gets to the point where they're no longer able to dress themselves, allow them to pick out the clothes that they want to wear for the day. You don't have to, do everything for them, but you can break it down into tasks where they can still make some decisions, but not necessarily every decision. Okay, so it's always important to find the way to involve the person as much as possible for as long as possible. What people do need, they need these things. We've talked about that, these things throughout this entire presentation. They need to have knowledge about their own journey. We don't want to hide information from them. If a person is diagnosed with a disorder like Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia, we want to tell them that that is actually what's going on. We don't want to remind them every day of it or every year, but if they're at the doctor and the doctor does make that diagnosis, then we want the doctor to involve them. We don't want to keep this a secret, because that is, again, not honoring their process and not honoring their wishes to know what's wrong with their body. And if they didn't know what was wrong with their body, but they knew they were having symptoms, then that is honestly kind of cruel to not let them know how their bodies are being affected. So we want to involve them gently in working with your doctors to let a person know, what's going on. And again, a care manager like myself, a dementia specialist like myself, can help you have that difficult conversation with a person. And how to do that. So we also want to have empathy, inclusion, autonomy, continuing the theme that I've shared this entire presentation about recognizing that person and continuing to involve them in their life. And we want consistency because consistency builds trust, but we don't want to be rigid. We want a structure for the day, but we don't want to create a routine that is a must or an ought or a should, because we want the person to, again, still have choices and still be able to say, no, I'm not really feeling like I want to do that right now. Okay, well, what do you feel like doing? Let's work on that together, because I'm here to help. What people do not need, they do not need stigma. Okay, they don't need to be ignored. They don't need to be treated in a way that is dishonorable to who they are as a human being and as your loved one. Don't assume that each person's symptoms are the same, that they are no longer capable of making any decision. They are very capable of making all types of decisions. It's just knowing what type of decision is a good decision to make and which one is not a very good one to make. So being there to support them to make healthy decisions is important. We don't want to exclude them. We don't want to exclude them from doctors' news or updates. We don't want to exclude them from the choices that are good and healthy for them. And we don't want to exclude them from decisions about their future. Okay, so again, bringing in a specialist like a care manager or a dementia specialist or like Jan's team is very, very helpful in finding the right way to communicate the next step. So we want to take this with you. Just cognitive changes are common over a person's life. They're all different. There is normal aging. There is minimal or mild cognitive impairment. There are acute disorders. There are chronic disorders. There are diseases that are affecting a person to the end of their life, and all of them are very, very different. So we want to be aware that each person is different in their own journey, and we want to be as person-centered as possible. We want to know that we're going to do our best to see that person for who they are and honor their wishes in a way that those wishes still are healthily supporting that person. That is important. We want to refer to appropriate, knowledgeable professionals. We want to involve our primary care physicians. We want to go to specialists like neurologists, clinical psychiatrists, neuropsychologists. You know, there are many professionals out there that can assist, dementia specialists, geriatric care managers, senior move managers, senior real estate professionals. Use us. We are out there. We are resources and can help. Of course, never forget that a person is still a person. Don't judge them by their cognitive impairment. See them as the strengths-based person that they can be and always have been. So that's kind of where my presentation ends up. So I thank you very much for sticking with me for this time. I know we started a little bit late, so we're a little bit over, but if anybody has some burning questions, I'd be happy to answer them if that's okay with you, Jan.
Absolutely. No, and Pam, I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. This was incredibly helpful information. I mean, just amazing. Pamela's contact information is on the slide you see. I've also put it in the chat. I've also included a seminar evaluation in the chat if you wouldn't mind clicking that link to give us some feedback. And then there is a question here for you, Pam. Could you give some examples of how to encourage a loved one to make beneficial changes without using should or other guilt-inducing words? For instance, how to encourage establishing a daily routine, or how to encourage them to get more physically active?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would start with that person's life history, learning what is already common for them and accepted for them to do. We don't want to ask them to do too much or something that they're not familiar with. So the best way to help a person make good decisions are assuring that you are offering decisions or choices that they are familiar with, that are not overwhelming or alienating for them. So for example, I like walking outdoors. That's something that I really enjoy doing. So if someone was going to say to me, would you like to run 3 miles on the treadmill? I'd be like, no, that's not something I want to do. You know, oh, well, would you like to go for a lovely walk outside? Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. Now, you know what? I might be walking this very same 3 miles that I was going to walk on the treadmill that you wanted me to walk on, but I won't even know it because I am doing something that I enjoy, that I love, that is being outside, because that is part of my personality and part of my preferences. So try to frame your choice in a way that you know is going to be most accepted by the person, because it is already part of their preferences and something that helps them feel safe.
Great, thank you. Another question. A caregiver, a family member who's providing care for a person with cognitive impairment at home, when they need a break, a respite for a couple days, what are the options? Is that something Corwood Care can come in and provide to give the caregiver a break, a little breather?
So it depends on, it's a yes and yes and yes. So there are different ways of bringing in services or resources to help. Sometimes it is through professional caregivers. So Corwood Care not only has care managers like myself, we actually have a home care agency in-house that we can then provide those services for you. There is though a whole process in bringing in a professional caregiver. Very rarely would it be for an extremely short period of time. We're just coming in for like a day or two and then leaving. There usually is an established process, like a minimum hours of 4 hours, you know, that is kind of required by an agency. There are though also resources out there in the community, like through, if you're living in Montgomery County, the Montgomery County ARC does offer respite services that they will pay for. and you go through the process with them. And it is it's a not-for-profit, so there is scholarship kind of monies, which is distributed to a person, rewarded in the amount of hours for respite, and the person can then use those hours for whatever they want. I'm not sure what the scholarship currently is, but it used to be about 140 hours a year. Okay, which, you know, if you need full-time care, of course, that's nothing. But for an occasional respite, like what Jan was just saying, like, you know, 2 days here or 2 days there, that can be available to you. But you have to be a family caregiver. You cannot be a hired caregiver, and you have to live in Montgomery County. So there are other resources that care managers like myself can help you with to find temporary respite care. There are also communities out there that offer temporary full-time, you know, respite care that you can move into a community temporarily. And that, of course, does come at a cost. That is not free, but it does sometimes help a lot just to give somebody a break.
That's great information. The folks on the call, if you'd like to, if you have questions, unmute yourself and ask. Feel free to do so at this time. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a moment.
Oh, puppy.
Whoops, that's not what I wanted to pull up, though. Here it is. I wanted to share with everyone that we have a monthly downsizers club that we do the first Friday of every month on Zoom. There's no cost for it. And it's for people that could be a few years away from making any kind of move, but it's a small support group where you can, relate to your peers, share resources, successes, challenges. We give homework every month. It's really fun, and the members are starting to bond. We had our 1-year anniversary this month. We started it a year ago. So think about joining us for that. And our contact information is on this slide as well. We do have a seminar schedule at capitalseniorsolutions.com, so you can see upcoming seminars. You might be interested in the one on September 20th, which will also be on Zoom, called The Truth About Getting Your Affairs in Order. And this is where we bring in an estate attorney, a financial advisor, and a funeral director to talk about how to end of life documents, planning that we don't want to think about but should be thinking about. So did anybody else have any questions before we end the seminar? Well,
I just
thank
want
you all.
to thank Pamela. That was amazing. I mean,
You.
I work in this world, right? And I think I know things. And then I just was taking notes throughout the whole thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Like the lack of sleep, or the recording routines in particular, like understanding someone's routine. Because if you are bringing someone into the home to help, they don't know what that routine is. And, the disruption of having the person come in the home and then also them not doing it the way the person wants them to be done. That was great advice. So thank you.
Yes, and we did record this seminar, and it will be on the video library on our seminars page at capitalseniorsolutions.com if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with someone else who could benefit from it. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Pam. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thanks for offering this.
You're very welcome.
I look forward to making connections when I'm in Maryland to see what other useful things that you offer that I could benefit from.
And we'd happy to be a resource for you, Gerald. Thank you for being here.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'd also like to thank Pamela. My brother's in Florida, so he's not nearby, but you gave some very good tips on communicating with him over the phone. He's in a long-term care facility. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Judith.
All right. Well, everyone, have a wonderful day. Thank you again for being here.
Bye,
And thank
Bye.
Thank you.